Welcome back to the Teacher's AI Cafe. I'm Kane, a teacher and a parent who wants AI to give us back our time. I share practical classroom-tested AI strategies to cut down your workload, improve your feedback and reduce stress so you can get your evenings back and be more present with your friends and family. No jargon, just actionable steps. Grab your mug. Now let's get going. Welcome back to the AI Teachers Update for the 1st of June. Another month has gone by. Amazing how quickly the year goes, doesn't it? So, as I said, I'm doing a few changes. I'm not going to call it a tech update. I'm going to call it maybe a weekly update or something like that, because there's not a lot of radical tech changes actually happening week to week, and I was getting a lot of repetition in there. So we don't want to do that. It's a little bit boring. So I'm going to cover a few different things. Today I'm going to talk about an article I found online. I will obviously give tech updates when they're relevant, they come through. But like I said, there wasn't enough to fill even a 5-minute episode unless I went into really depth about one or two things, which is really not the point of today's update coming through. A couple of things I've been working on this week. I've been using NotebookLM to turn these podcasts, as in not the update ones, but the other ones, actually into short videos. And some of them are actually pretty cool. I've come up with, I think, 2 really good prompts. One prompt around the different models, and the other prompt is around when I interview people. And I'm using these to turn the videos. If you want to check them out, they're on my Kane, the AI Teacher YouTube channel, which also has got some podcasts up there if you want to see a couple of the results. And I'm slowly working through them. Because of my account, I can only make about 2 videos a day doing this, so it's a slow process because I've got quite a few episodes I need to convert. But I get them up every couple of days. So have a look. So if you've listened to something and you want to see a visual version of it, go check out the podcast. So I started working on through the prompts on that. Anyway, so like I said, that's where I'm going. So what's happened in the last week? Well, Anthropic released Claude Opus 4.8. And the main difference is coming out is it's apparently going to emphasize better honesty, meaning the model is more likely to signal uncertainty instead of pushing ahead with a polished but weak answer. This also gives users now more control over how much effort the model applies to a task. I think this is probably really relevant because when I use Claude, because I'm paying for Claude, man, do I chew through those tokens at different times. And then I get a message saying you can't use it till 2:22 p.m., like 3 or 4 hours later. So I find that quite frustrating compared to ChatGPT, where I never hit my token limit at all, or not since the very early days. Definitely not since I paid for it. And when you look at this topic, I was talking to a friend this morning, he was talking about how Uber and all these other companies are thinking how they're using AI because they're getting these massive token bills. Because obviously they've got an account that doesn't hit a limit, it just keeps using it. And then they get a bill at the end of the month saying you've used all these tokens, and they're getting quite expensive. I guess in getting back to what 4.8 is going to give, the idea is that it's going to be less of giving those confident errors. I've seen some really good memes going around about, can I eat these? Meanwhile, in Australia goes, can I eat these berries? And then they die. The person dies, and then the next scene is, oh, sorry about that. You are correct. That is actually poisonous berries. So not getting it right the first time. So we're looking to have a model say, look, I'm not that sure. And then you can give more feedback, more information, more details to actually try and get a good answer for that. Second big redesign is Microsoft 365 Copilot. And this has been really clunky. I mentioned that before. It hasn't been really the best implementation of it. But now it's faster and cleaner, according to Microsoft. It's less cluttered. The interface is more context-sensitive controls. And staff are more likely to use it for a particular task. I've really got to do some episodes on Copilot because I find it very frustrating when I have used it under my education department's version. But apparently the next tier up is actually very good. So anyone using it, please give me some feedback on that. So the idea is you can get more practical results from that. So in terms of what else has actually been happening since then outside, Canva has launched LearnGrid. Now, I haven't talked about Canva before, but obviously they, for a long time, have incorporated AI into their products. So LearnGrid incorporates, combines curriculum mapped resources with AI activity creation, live lesson delivery. Major School has added a podcast generator, plus a shareable custom student tools. In other words, the teacher-facing rapid layer is, I guess, they're working on trying to stay that competitive to what the actual main platforms are actually doing. Because basically when these base models become quicker, cleaner, and better at handling things, these wrapper sites naturally get better themselves. But the big question really is, how much does it cost him to actually do this? versus the model. Is it sustainable compared to people just paying their own? Though some of these wrapper sites are quite cheap over the year, but what do you get over? So this week I'm going to talk about an education story. Like I said, this is going to be a bit of the new format we're going to be doing. This comes from the ABC, which is Australian Broadcasting Corporation, which is the government-funded, or public-funded, technically, news organisation. They do a lot of good stuff. They make some really shocking stuff as well, depending on whose agenda is actually going into it. But in general, their news is actually fairly good. So what they did, they actually looked into schools across Asia and how they're actually using AIs that are more concrete than the usual policy debate would actually say, particularly what we're seeing here in Australia. A strong example actually came out of Singapore, where a secondary student described using NotebookLM and similar tools to explain difficult chemistry concepts, to summarise documents and answer last-minute revision questions before exams. And this is immediately relevant to us as Australian teachers because it frames AI as a study support, not a machine to replace effort. And it's about helping students understand and prepare and giving that additional feedback that we can't do because they're not there 24/7 for them. Sometimes we get them 4 hours a week, and if they pay attention outside that and come see us, that is essentially it. So the idea is this is showing how it's, and rather than getting the tool to do the learning for them, they're using the tool to support their actual learning. And another second practical use that came out of this article is basically even more friendly is the idea that AI at a student's school, for example, the chemistry department uses AI to analyse practical exam errors and point students towards the topics they need to revise. And I do this manually. I don't know people who do it. I'll go through my exam. I'll break down, say, a computer science exam is the example. I'll break down all the different sections in there by topic and area and find out where you find students are particularly weak and where they're strong, and then you can adjust your teaching when you do your next exam. And I got an example. I did a computer science one. We had more than usual SQL questions. We don't spend a huge amount of time in class. Obviously, students didn't spend revisions on it, and they all performed really poorly. I had to explain this to my school leadership because, they did way below their averages. No, if you look at this one section, they're way below on that. But if you look at all the other sections that's studying, they're actually way above their averages in class. But he didn't quite understand that. He tried to use it for a different purpose, part of his argument. But the idea is we can use this data. So this is really useful. And so instead of just generating endless new content, AI, in this case, is actually helping to identify the misconceptions, sort common mistakes, and make revision more targeted for the students, even at exam level. So it's used well. Students can spend less time revising everything badly and more time working on what they actually generally do not understand. And normally, obviously, we do get that conversation. If they talk to teachers, they can highlight those points. But once again, it's a tool that a student can actually work on themselves. Third use that came out of the article is students and their father describe AI using AI as a tutor, a quiz tool, and a sparring partner was actually beneficial because she was using it to improve her essays, not to write them for her. And she checks out her sources so that she does not simply absorb incorrect information. And this is obviously useful for educators because if our students are actually using AI to do this and they're sparring, or getting someone playing the devil's advocate, testing them, their hypotheses and their ideas, we're going to end up with a much healthier frame in terms of their thinking and their critical thinking skills and pretending it does not exist, or letting it quietly replace thinking in the background by not actively getting engaged within it. Obviously, the report does give us a warning, but obviously they've got to always cover both sides of it. Points out concerns about cognitive offloading, declining digital literacy, and the role of rolling AI into schools too quickly without teacher buy-in. And this is a real issue here in Australia. So many teachers aren't even looking at buy-in. A colleague at a school, they apparently had a debate. It was really about 50-50 across the staff whether they should be using AI or not for that. So the author's line was that the article is probably more of a sensible summary of the whole issue, AI last rather than AI first. And we got that with the David Cutler. If you listen to that interview I did with him, he says we do all paper first, no AI first, and then we bring AI in to supplement the tools, then learning as we get further into it. Japan's got a more cautious pilot, which presented one contrast. Within the article it notes Australia has already released guidance responsible for AI use in schools, but it's very broad. And this is useful, but like I said, there's no real plan to implement it, at least at my education department level at this stage. Love to hear it if there is elsewhere in the world. This is the useful reminder that we don't begin with the tool, obviously. We begin with our contextual knowledge and foundational knowledge, and then we use tools to actually build on top of that, which is coming away with that. The other one, big update, which is semi-AI related, is this week Australia had its data on its digital literacy of our students, and our Year 10, which is our year before we go into senior school, students scored about 36% achieved digital literacy, and that's a real concern. It totally debunks the idea I never got into, that the idea is these kids are digital natives. No, they know they're confident in picking up these tools and actually running with them, but they actually don't know how to use them very effectively or how to use IT in general. So I was having a conversation with a colleague with their digital technology program. They're going back to the basics as part of it when they're talking about digital literacy. It's like saving, copying, pasting, all the things like phones don't actually do for you, or the way you save and organise files and things like that. So I said, totally evolving. So hopefully you enjoyed this update, the slightly new format. If you're interested in coming on and having a chat, I've got one teacher lined up. We're going to add on soon. I'd love to hear from you, wherever you are in the world. Online is absolutely fantastic. And hopefully hear from you soon. Till then, look after yourself, keep up the good work, and keep experimenting with AI.